Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Ghost in the Magazine. I'm Elle.
はじめまして、私の名前あるです。どうぞよろしくお願いします。Hi, I'm Al. We're talking about kaijus.
Yes. Today we are covering Godzilla Minus One, which is still in theaters, so this is going to be with spoilers. So if you don't want it to be spoiled, come back. Because I'm not gonna be able to talk about this without spoilers. I
No.
love this movie so much. I
Yes.
cried at the end. Not
Same.
gonna
I did too. My whole family in the entire row, you're just like sobbing.
Okay, good. Because like I was the only one in my theater. My brother was sitting next to me and I was embarrassed. But like everyone else seemed pretty normal. I was the one sitting there bawling.
Yeah, no, it was my whole family was very like even my brother-in-law was like starting to do this situation. Like
Mhm.
it was intense.
So, I have to say I've watched some like I think there was like a Godzilla versus King Kong movie
Mhm.
recently in recent years. It was not for me. I have watched several of these and they were not for me. And so like when I watched this and I liked it so much, I was kind of surprised. Um this is both like a kaiju horror movie, but also just like a really well-written drama.
Yeah.
Um just this subplot, or I guess it's not really a subplot, it's the plot of this man's life as he is learning to face Godzilla is really moving.
Yeah.
It starts out he is a kamikaze pilot who can't bring himself to do the kamikaze part, and he lands on this island and uh feigns that there's something wrong with his plane, so the mechanics look it over and they're like, I don't really see anything wrong here, but and he's like, what are you saying? And they get in this argument, and then that night Godzilla comes.
Yes. And he's little. He's a little Godzilla.
Still seemed pretty big to me. I was still scared,
Yeah.
but
He was like teen Godzilla. It was like the whole like
hmm
and Guardians of the Galaxy. He's not yet reached his full Godzilla powers at that point. So, but
um
yeah. And then all hell breaks loose.
yeah, because I mean guy is a little bit of like a obvious, like, I don't want to say coward because it's smart. Like he doesn't want to risk his life. And he's like, if I shoot at this thing, it's just gonna make it mad,
Yeah.
which is correct, honestly. So, he ends up kind of like fumbling the bag and getting all of the mechanics killed. And then the lead mechanic, which him and the lead mechanic are the only ones that make it through that initial encounter, pretty much says, fuck you, you're an asshole. You killed all of my friends. They have these families. He gives them all these pictures of these men with their families and is like, you get to live with this the rest of your life. See ya.
Mhm.
And that's kind of
Yeah.
like the intro we get started with. And then our main character goes back to his family's home and finds that his family's all gone because of air raids.
Yeah, all of Tokyo has been completely decimated and it's just utter chaos. And of course he has like that very classic anime protagonist like shield a bit where his house is the only one that's like still semi sort of standing so that he can have a place to crash. But he meets
Mm-hmm.
up with his neighbor who is like, I thought you were a kamikaze pilot. And she starts giving him a bunch of shit about not following through with things. And so he realizes that he's just utterly alone because the people who were supposed to be there for him were either killed in the raid or they have turned on him because he did not fulfill his duty as a pilot. So he's just kind of like, Shikishima's like very down and out about life at this point because that's one of the reasons why it's called minus one is that Japan is at its point zero and he's at his lowest point at the start of this movie. So it starts out very heavy with
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla, then also coming in and adding more. He's the minus one. He's just causing more chaos because he's Godzilla and he can.
Yes. To skip ahead a little bit, I just want to talk about this Godzilla because this
He's
Godzilla to me is
so great.
terrifying.
He's
He's
so great.
terrifying.
I was like, I looked at him, I was like, he's so friend shaped. He reminds me of a cat. Like, look at his face. Like, look at him.
Well,
He's so cat.
he has like a belly, which is really cute because I kept noticing his belly. But when he gets mad and does the nuclear thing,
Yeah.
that reminded me, that brought back like the sound in the theater, brought me back to like this deep visceral memory of being terrified in my childhood of Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still. It was
Mm.
like that same sound and that same feeling, and I was just like, ugh. I actually got creeped out and scared, which I don't typically have that reaction to stuff, but again,
Yeah.
it's like a visceral childhood memory it kind of activated. And it was actually a pretty cool special effect. Usually I am not a
Yeah.
CG fan, but this was
It
pretty
looked
well
so good. It looked
done.
he just looks so imposing, and his scale is massive compared to like when he's walking by buildings and when he's like breaching the ocean. It's like you look at him just like standing next to things and you're like, this dude is huge. And my sister and I were
Mhm.
looking at like the action figures, like the official like Godzilla figure that's coming out for this movie, and it's not coming out until October of next year, but
Oh.
the Godzilla figure itself stands about 9 inches tall. His
Mhm.
tail width is 14 inches tall. And it's like long. So if it tells you the scale of how big Godzilla is supposed to be in this, that he is just this massive, impressive creature, and you felt it. Like the theater
Mhm.
was rumbling when he took a step, and you're just like, oh, you could feel
Yeah.
like he's coming for you, and you can't outrun Godzilla in this.
Yeah, the sound design in this movie was so good, and that's, like, the way
Yeah.
to really get me with a horror movie is the sound, and
Yeah.
one of the other things I really liked is whenever they were in, like, action combat scenes with Godzilla,
Mhm.
they had, like, that I don't know if it's, like, some kind of a tuba or something from the original movies. It was like just like it was like a hit, a couple of hits of notes that
Yeah.
they would pipe in every once in a while, and it like again it brought back those childhood memories of watching sci-fi and kaiju movies and getting scared, getting
Yeah.
actually scared because I was a little kid. So it was just really well done. So let's get back to the story though. I had to like geek out a little bit there, but
Oh yeah, no, same. He's pretty cool in this movie. He's got a really great design, and I was very impressed
me too.
with the Godzilla.
Um so he goes back to this house and he kind of like picks up a family. He there's another woman whose family was all, you know, gone in the air raids, and she has a kid who not her kid, but she picked the kid up to try to help a lady that she found dying in the rubble. And so now he has like a wife and kid at home, even though they're not. And he
Mhm.
has all of these like self-esteem issues about not being able to like be who he is supposed to be. And so he feels like he's like disgraced and couldn't like be a good husband for her, even as they start, you know, living
Yeah.
together and kind of like having that dynamic. And it seems obvious that that's something that she wants, and he just is he can't even consider it because of his own self-esteem issues,
Yeah.
which creates another, you know, kind of terrible dynamic as we go through this movie because her perspective is very different. She's like, we survived, there's a reason why we survived.
Mhm.
So we can't stop living our lives now. And he pretty much just feels like his life is already over until about there's a turning point partway through the movie, and I remember it very well where he says, I want to live at his parents' shrine because it was the Run Pee app stop point where I could go pee while they were doing something else. So I was waiting. This is a long movie.
It is a
I
long
had to
movie.
use the
Yeah.
app a couple of times.
It's definitely a really well done like war drama in and of
Hmm.
itself, because you look into his like survivor's guilt and the post side of what happens after the war, and it's a like the psychological side of Koichi's like development of like, I shouldn't have lived. I have all these pictures that I keep looking at. I'm haunting myself, and my parents can't let me go through this. And I have Noriko who's living here and a child that I can't claim them as my own, even though everyone thinks they're my own. And he's just a hot mess through
Hmm.
all of it. And he's so emo, and he's just so, and like his crewmates are just like, bro, she's hot and she
Hmm.
wants you, and he's like, I can't. He's just like
Yeah.
so far into himself that he just
Well,
can't figure out how to like get past it. It's like that whole the phrase of the war is still happening for me, which is
yeah.
that theme that he's kind of like him and like Tachibana the mechanic and Japan as a whole are still kind of like lingering in. And the war is Godzilla, because sometimes you forget Godzilla even a part of the movie because the war drama is so heavy, but then he's always just kind of
Yeah.
like Godzilla-ing in the background, slowly
And
rising out of the water.
yes, and this war's not over for him, and he picks a very dangerous job going
Mhm,
out to like disable these mines with it. It seems like the one guy's a scientist. They
mhm,
all were like ex-military because when Godzilla comes in, they're all of these ex-military guys are like, we can't really count on the government. They kind of fumbled the bag with
mhm.
the war. So we're going to come together and have like our own coalition of citizens, which is at least what Run P called it. That's how I know. It's just a great app. Like they don't sponsor us, but they should because I use them every time I go to a movie. Okay. But I like the way, like you said, the war drama is as lively and interesting
Mhm.
as the Godzilla element,
Yeah.
which is very much there as well.
Yeah, because it's hard, like when you look at like usually like war horror movies, they're usually like throwing zombies into the trenches,
Mm,
or there's like a mad scientist things happening, or there was like that one where that like group of people like found an old like Nazi encampment, and then all the ghosts that they killed are haunting them, and like this sort of like that. But to make it like an actually interesting war drama that feels, it's very truthful, but then you add the horror element to it, it makes it all the more scarier, because this feels like, oh, this is tangible, the ocean is scary and it's deep and dark, and there are things like the Meg, and it just felt more engaging than most like war horror movies, which I think is why it stood
mhm.
out so much, and why it was like, I'm totally invested in the war side of this as much as I
Yeah.
am the Godzilla side of this. So it was
Well,
the balance was really well done.
and they get you invested in the characters.
Yes.
I was very invested in him because it's like, I don't know, you see somebody that has taken it so many times on the chin and
Mhm.
wants to give up, has pretty much like decided that his life is over, but through like the right people, which is the what's the woman's name again that lives with him?
Noriko.
Noriko and the little girl that they're taking care of and his friends and even Tachibana when he comes back,
Mhm.
although him sending him those funny letters, like telling him it was all his fault, so he would come and kick his ass was beautiful.
That was great. Yeah, it is. It's one of those that it's all the cast had great roles to play, and you could all feel that they had different aspects to helping Shikima like find himself again, because by the end of it he was a damn hero. He was
Yes.
awesome. But yeah, and it's like the whole cast was like, Noriko was great, and I love that she had her own development, and it was,
Mhm.
she wanted to go to work and he let her go to work, and they had a really nice falling in love type of thing that was really slow and it felt real. And
Mhm. Yes,
yeah.
that is true because a lot of times movies will have this contrived love element where you just don't see the chemistry between the people and they're just like
Right.
together for 5 minutes and then all of a sudden everyone's willing to risk everything for the other
Yeah.
person. And that's not very realistic, but you can see this one and then when she is out coming home from work, I believe, and
Mhm.
Godzilla attacks her train and then he meets her in the street and they're trying to get away and then she pushes him into the alley when she sees
Yeah.
that explosion coming Man, that was a very emotionally charged, heavy moment,
Yeah.
even at that point. Although I did kind of feel like we didn't see her body, we didn't see her mangled.
Yeah.
I know she's coming
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, she's coming back at some point. I was like, she has to at some point. But it was a good turning point for him to realize that like, oh, now this girl that has been living with me since she's an infant has lost what she thinks is her mother, and I've
Mhm.
lost the woman that was helping me figure out my life. And then there's kind of that whole like, well, now we have to stop Godzilla from doing this to more people because Godzilla is making a beeline for Tokyo because
Yeah.
that's what he does. So it's I don't know. It was yeah, the Ginza scene with the train, especially when Godzilla just picks up that train. And again, I'm like, he's like a cat.
Yes.
He's like picking it up in his mouth and just like walking around. I'm like, look what I got. And people are screaming. It's just like I'm like, I
And
want to
she's holding on
that.
inside that train.
Yes. I did the whole time I'm sitting there going, I was like, I would get eaten because I want to pet Godzilla. He looks so pettable. He's so friend shaped. He is a friend shaped.
I'm just like, I don't have the physical stamina to escape the situation. I'm fine.
No. Yeah, and I do like that they did a progression of time because it's like it starts in the war and you can
Mhm.
see the years going by and him getting enough money to get the house built and Akiko grow up and it feels like they understood that they needed to invest the time in the characters to make us care about it for so it wouldn't just be just another kaiju movie.
And they did a very good job with that.
Yeah.
I also really liked the scientist guy on
Hmm.
his crew. I also thought he was really cute, so
He's so
he's
cute.
like a
He's
cute
so
old guy. I was
cute.
like,
I
"Oh my
know.
gosh."
He had
Fighting a
fabulous
little bit.
hair.
He did. He was really cute. He also like his idea of how to kill Godzilla was really fascinating, especially
Yeah.
like, we just went through the whole submarine thing that's gonna send us all to hell, but like they were going to sink him really fast
Mhm.
and have the pressure of the ocean kill him. And if that didn't work, they were gonna like blow off the things that sank him and pop him up really fast to see if that opposite pressure would work. Um, it didn't.
It was cool to watch though, like
Yeah.
the planning scene and like here's the science behind it
Mhm.
and here's how many ships we need and it's like, oh, this feels tangible. This doesn't just
Yeah.
feel like we're just gonna shoot him with some rockets. Like this was like, oh, I was believing that this could possibly work while I was sitting there watching him explain it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also that scene was so good too because that's also I think where one of the no, maybe it was later. I just remember somebody mentioned, oh, they didn't our government didn't even give us ejection
Mhm.
seats. And I was like, when they said that, it was like a list of stuff, but that was like the one thing that was that stood out to me
Yeah.
a lot because partially because he was a kamikaze pilot before. And I was like, okay, that's gonna be some important in the end. And it ended
Yeah.
up being
Yeah,
important.
there's
So
your Chekhov's gun for the movie.
yep. They actually used it unlike the butt plugs in Emmanuel's Revenge.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it was and I really enjoyed the fact that it was very like naval based because it was really cool to see a lot of like Godzilla in
Mhm.
the water and a lot of it taking place in the ocean and because I mean those scenes could not have been easy to have tried to film but like watching him decimate the boats and the
Yeah.
like his nuclear power activating underwater and like it was a very aesthetically stunning film and I'm like one of those people that
Mhm.
I'm such a nerd like I love like wartime vessels like I love like old biplanes I have like an entire like World War II like manual of like how like fighter planes like I love that sort of stuff and I don't know, it's just like every aspect of the movie was so well done. The timing was well done. The pacing was well done. The horror was really
Mhm.
good. It was definitely one of the better Godzilla movies that have come out in recent years. Uh, um, which makes me really excited for the next Kong versus Godzilla because I hated the last one like you did too. But I'm like, after this,
I was so excited for that, and this is for a stupid reason. Well, I also watched like the old ones when I was a little kid. My mom really
Yeah.
liked Godzilla, but also I'm like a big Rampage fan, which is like a
Mhm.
video game.
Yep.
And so I'm just like I always get stoked when I see it, but that Godzilla King Kong one, I got 20 minutes into it. I actually bought HBO for Mortal Kombat and it was on there, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this too. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. This is so boring.
I
Um
love that we both got HBO just to watch Mortal Kombat.
yes.
I did the same thing.
I was like, well, if I have it, I might as well watch this
Yep.
too. Mortal Kombat was my favorite video game as a kid, so I played
That
Mortal
explains a
Kombat
lot.
trilogy so much. I know. The thing about this movie though, well, that Godzilla King Kong, I believe was long too, but I didn't get but past 20 minutes, so I don't really know.
Right.
But the fact that it is really long and I had to pee and that was my only problem. It was so engaging that it did not bother me. And I complain a lot
Mhm.
when a movie is long. I fall asleep very easily, not so much in theaters, but there was no chance of me falling asleep during this movie. It was
Right.
a really engaging movie. The ending was real good though, too.
Yeah.
When they get this idea to fix this plane and they're setting it up like a kamikaze plane. They're it's full of bombs, there's all kinds of artillery in it, and the idea is like last ditch effort there, he's gonna fly it into Godzilla's mouth, and because he saw that that's where he is. That reminds me of video games, but that's where he is.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say?
That's where he's like, because he's most vulnerable because he's not
Vulnerable,
covered in the
there we go.
scales. Yeah.
Yes. Vulnerable,
Because
that's the
during their first encounter with Godzilla on the boat, they were out releasing some of the mines in the ocean. So they had a couple of them on board and they were able to drop a few into Godzilla's mouth and it blew up half of Godzilla's head, but then he like instantly regenerated.
yeah.
Because which it would have been horrifying to see in real life to just watch this massive thing that's like so close to your boat, just be like, oh haha, just kidding.
Yeah, especially because it was so grotesque too. It was like
Yeah.
bubbling up. Huh. Like
Yeah.
that's one thing
It
I
was
had.
I was like, oh.
That is not attractive, Godzilla. Jeez. Jeez,
No.
bro.
But yeah, but it's like it's actually this scene here, but it's like, and if you look at the scale, like imagine, like you could fit a whole plane. Because at first I'm like, no, you can't fit a plane in Godzilla's mouth. I'm like, no, yeah, actually, you probably could. He would probably eat you whole.
Yep. So everyone thinks that his thing is just a kamikaze plane. It's gonna be the end of him if he has to do it. So they're like, it's not gonna come to that. But we can use him to bait Godzilla out of the
Mhm.
city back into the ocean so that we can get the buoys around him or whatever. Those, they're like freon tanks is what I think they are
Yeah.
actually. So when he comes back over after like they've tried everything and we've had like several moments, like there's even a moment where the kid with the broken arm comes back with the
Mhm.
tugboats and helps them get the extra. But I didn't understand how that would work anyway because they're pulling him back up. But the point is to change pressure really fast. So the fact that there was that big pause was like,
Well, I think it was the fact, so when they submerged him, Godzilla's like internal pressure changed. And so when you're
mm-hmm,
bringing back up, they were trying to basically inflict a really fast moving,
mm-hmm,
like the bends, give him the
decompression,
bends,
yeah.
decompression. And so when the crane collapsed, they didn't have enough energy because it was pulling, they didn't have enough energy to continue to rise him. So with the tugboats, they were able to add enough
Mm-hmm.
acceleration to continue to pull him back up because Godzilla totally chewed through the balloon like a cat. He ate the balloon. God, see, I'm on the Godzilla as a cat train, but they had this big massive balloon, and Godzilla just like devoured it and just kind of like floated up, and so they had no way to get him back up, and so they pulled him up, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like slowing down, but he's still like turning nuclear, and so you have all just like this whole range
Yes.
of boats, and then Shikishima finally comes back in with the plane and starts circling him over these massive naval vessels. Did you about lose your mind when the two boats had to like cross side by side?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. And it had that the scraping metal sound there. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, I was like, this is like, ugh. Yeah, it was that was the part that made me the most tense. I'm like, I don't like the thought of vehicles crashing into each other. I've been in too many wrecks. I don't like the thought of
Aw.
these big boats like careening into each other. But yeah, they finally get Godzilla surfaced, and he's angry, and
Mhm.
he's icy, and he's slow, and he's confused. And then there's a plane above his head, and he's just like, just let me go back to the city and eat things, please.
Yes, I need to eat things.
Me
Um,
too.
but that doesn't happen because he
No.
flies the plane into his mouth and then he ejects. But they don't realize he ejected immediately,
Yeah.
so
Well, because the
everyone's
explosion, there was so much artillery in the plane that when he
yes.
exploded, Godzilla was just like engulfed in flames
Too, and
above
he
the
was like
water.
there was a good that was a good scene too.
It was really good. He's like crumbling in the middle of the ocean and it's like falling apart, and it's very video game coded, but
It is, it really is. This is like, I don't know, it was a good story. It was like the horror element was good, the sound design was good,
Mhm.
the visuals were good, and it reminded me of like, having a beer and hanging out at the arcade. So like every part of
Yep.
this was so good.
For any of you of those who don't like, no, it is entirely in Japanese. So
Yeah.
it feels very authentic, which I really appreciate too, because it felt like a return to the original form of what Godzilla was supposed to be, instead of
Mhm.
having like the last couple ones that had like, oh, let's throw in the girl from Stranger Things because she's popular. Like, no, it was an entirely Japanese cast. It was entirely done in Japanese, and it was old school Japanese too, because it was very like traditional, and wasn't as modernized as what a lot of stuff you hear nowadays. So it felt very like respectful, and the sentences were long, and they didn't have any of the slang in it, which I really appreciated because I'm like, oh, this is very authentic to the time, and you don't often see Japan's side of what happened post World War II and
Mhm.
then their repercussions of it, and them picking themselves back up after we decimated them,
Yeah.
because it wasn't an easy fix for them. So it was a kind of a nice thing to see it from their perspective and their take on the monster movie, and it was really enjoyable. It was very fun. Very
Mhm.
fun.
And then like
I,
the epilogue to everything is that he finds Noriko in a hospital and
yes.
the family's reunited, and that's why I cried.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those, like, even when like the neighbor got the like letter, say,
Mhm.
like, you could tell like that was what
Yes.
was happening, but still, even so, seeing them reunited and her asking, is your war finally over, was such a that was like that's the last thing that's spoken in the movie, is her asking if his war is finally over, and he just like sobbing into her arms. It was a very like
Yes.
it was a very nice way to tie it up, and then the big meaty chunks of Godzilla that are sinking to the bottom of the ocean start bubbling. And that's how the movie ends.
The meaty chunks. I love
with,
that.
with
Yes.
meaty chunks of Godzilla bubbling out of the ocean.
It's like
So
the ocean is just a big Godzilla soup. It's okay.
it really is. It's so funny. And, and then the next night after we saw this, we watched the Meg, and we're like, it's just like lots of things blowing up with meaty chunks in the ocean. Like, really, Asia. It's
It's
just
just
like
monster soup. That's what the ocean is. Like, and
it
for
really
real,
is.
like what is in like the deep ocean, those things are scary. Monster soup. It's
Hmm.
monster soup.
I totally disagree with Steph. The ocean is scarier than space. The ocean is terrifying.
I think
The
they're both
ocean, the ocean.
scary. I
I
think
don't
a
know.
good staying out of
There.
both.
This is true. This is true. Don't like the deep waters. I don't want to know what's down there. But yeah,
Mm-mm.
this is a really great kaiju film. It was a really great Godzilla movie. It was a really
Mhm.
great war drama. It has a little bit of something for everybody, and it's definitely worth seeing, and especially in theaters if you can see it in theaters.
Yes.
I didn't believe most people when I saw like the hype on social
Mhm.
media of like, this is the best movie of 2023. No, it is definitely
Mhm.
one of the best movies of 2023. It was phenomenal.
I've only seen a few in theaters, but more than usual actually, because I'm not really a go out among the public person,
Right?
but but I've been going to theaters more because of the podcast, and I watched Evil Dead Rise, and I watched Last Voyage of the Demeter, which was awful, and then I watched
More
Haunting
things in
in
the
Venice.
ocean.
Yes.
Like lots of ocean monsters this year.
Yes, but the monster and the Demeter was not a good one. It was not a scary one. It was a weird one. But I definitely think, at least two of those were solid movies that I had a good time, but this was a great movie. I would give
Yeah,
this like 4.5 chuds.
same.
High up there for me. So
Yeah.
I would definitely watch this again. I'm actually looking forward to it getting released. I
Yeah.
don't know, I might even if I travel at some point before this shifts out of theaters, I might even watch it in a theater again. I'm just not paying to watch it in the antiquated theater again.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's definitely worth seeing. It's good. I'm looking forward to more Godzilla movies, and my siblings haven't seen any of them, so I'm like, well, we're gonna have to go back and like watch some of the old ones now because they're now all
yes.
super into the whole Godzilla thing. And I was like, look, we got another Kong versus Godzilla coming out in April on my sister's birthday. Let's just like make it a year of the kaiju because there's tons of them and they're fun.
Yes.
Like even the old
Yeah.
ones are fun. The kaijus are coming back.
Yes.
So, which I'm stoked.
Yes.
So, because I love big monster movies. Let's go crush a city. Let's do
Yes. So you can find this podcast on the internet at ghostinthemagazine.site. You can find us on Twitter at GITM Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Nocturnical.
And you can find me at Maybe Mockingbird.
Okay, bye.